You stole him. The voice wasn't loud, but it vibrated through the hull of the rust bucket, somehow bypassing the aged acoustic dampeners and settling deep in Cale's bones. He spun from the jury-rigged navigation console, hand instinctively going to the disruptor holstered low on his hip. She stood just inside the airlock hatch, a silhouette against the faint, swirling nebulae outside, impossible and utterly real. How she'd breached his external security grid, his internal sensors, his very ship, was a puzzle his fried circuits couldn't solve in the 2 seconds it took him to register the threat. And she wasn't Kyrian, not like the traitors he'd sometimes encountered in neutral zones, all sharp angles and clipped, resonant speech. She was something else. Older, more elemental. Her form was obscured by the dim light, but he felt her presence like a physical pressure in the small cargo hold, a low hum that resonated oddly with the baby sleeping soundly in the salvaged crib against the far bulkhead. The baby stole who? Cale asked, his voice rough. He kept his hand near the disruptor, eyes locked on the unmoving shape. Look, whoever you are, you've got the wrong heap of scrap. This old bucket barely flies, let alone pulls off any high-stakes kidnapping. The spark, she stated, her voice layered, like wind chimes made of stone. You took the spark. He was meant to make the transition alone, untainted. The spark. Cale lowered his hand slightly, confusion warring with caution. He glanced back at the crib. The baby, small, with a faint inherent luminescence that flickered softly even in sleep, was wrapped in a salvaged thermal blanket. You mean him, the kid? I didn't steal him. I found him, adrift in a life pod that was leaking atmosphere faster than I could patch it. No transponder, no ident signals, nothing, just him. He gestured vaguely. He would have died. She moved then, a liquid grace that made the small space feel even smaller. Not fast, but deliberate, closing the distance between them. Cale stiffened, every instinct screaming danger. But something in her posture, the way her focus seemed split between him and the crib, held him still. He caught a flicker of movement beneath whatever material cloaked her form, a soft, internal glow that pulsed with her words. Found him, she echoed, pausing a few feet away. Her head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed ancient, that is, unexpected and problematic. She made another small movement, and Cale felt a strange, non-physical touch, like a brush of cool air across his mind. Assessing, probing. He flinched back, a deep-seated rejection of the intrusion. Hey, cut that out, he warned, bringing his hand back to the disruptor grip. Mind reader, are we? Sorry. The cranial implants are strictly for medical use these days. My thoughts are my own. Thanks. She ignored the barb, her attention fixed on the crib again, the pulsing glow beneath her cloak intensifying for a moment, before softening. The prophecy foretold his emergence into the void, unprotected, to test his resilience. Your intervention, it has complicated matters, immeasurably. She turned her full attention back to Cale, and he felt the weight of an ancient gaze, though he still couldn't make out specific features in the dim light. By intercepting the spark, by touching him, protecting him, you have become bonded. Cale snorted, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. Bonded? Lady, I pulled a baby out of a broken escape pod. That's called being a decent sentient, not getting married. Not marriage, she corrected. And Cale could almost feel the vibration of amusement in her voice, though her posture remained rigidly formal. Bonding, to the spark, and through the spark, to his lineage, to the Kyrian Empire. By saving him, you have fulfilled an obscure passage. You are now irrevocably designated the spark's protector, his father. Cale stared, mouth slightly open. The low hum in his bones intensified. No longer just a physical sensation, but something more, a resonance building between him, the woman and the sleeping baby. The air in the cargo hold grew heavy, charged with an energy that felt both foreign and strangely familiar. His what now? He managed, the word a choked whisper. He looked at the sleeping infant, then back at the imposing, glowing figure who had materialized on his ship like a ghost. The universe, it seemed, had just delivered the punchline to a very dark joke. "Father," she repeated, the simple word carrying the weight of empires and eons. "And that presents a unique challenge." She took another step closer, and Kale finally saw the subtle shifting of light on her form, the way the material seemed less like fabric and more like solidified energy that pulsed with her movements. He could sense the heat radiating from her, a different kind of warmth than any biological being he'd encountered. The scent of ozone and something like crushed moonlight filled the small space. He gripped the disruptor, but his mind was reeling. A baby, a prophecy, an empire, and now, fatherhood. To an alien kid, and this woman, this impossible creature who smelled of stars and thunder, was looking at him like he held the fate of galaxies in his hands. The tension in the room wasn't just about the weapon he held. It was about the invisible ties she was weaving around him, binding him to a destiny he couldn't comprehend. He needed to get her off his ship, needed to put 1,000 parsecs between him and this bizarre glowing entanglement. But she was blocking the only exit, and the low resonance in his bones was making it hard to think, making it hard to breathe. He could feel the soft internal light of the baby, pulsing in sync with the light emanating from the woman, and felt, with chilling certainty, that his life had just fundamentally, irrevocably changed. "Challenge," Kale echoed, the word tasting like ash. His fingers were numb around the disruptor grip. This wasn't just some random salvage find gone wrong. This was falling into a black hole feet first. He looked at the baby again, the soft rhythmic flicker of its internal light. It looked utterly peaceful, oblivious to the cosmic chaos it had unleashed. "You show up out of nowhere, tell me I'm the alien dad of a kid I found in a life pod, and you call it a challenge." He forced a shaky laugh. "Lady, my challenges usually involve bribing border patrols or finding decent fuel. This is a whole new level of screwed." She didn't react to his sarcasm in the way a human would. No smile, no frown, just that intense layered gaze. "The spark is vital to the continuity of our lineage," she explained, her voice losing some of its initial demand, replaced by a weary pragmatism that was just as unnerving. His transition into this phase of existence was carefully orchestrated. Your interception, while it saved his life, disrupted the intended process, and the prophecy regarding his first protector is absolute. It speaks of a being from outside our resonance, one who finds the spark alone in the void. "You fit the description precisely." "Great," Kale muttered. "So I'm some kind of cosmic babysitter ordained by alien scripture?" "More than that," she said, taking another slow step, the spatial compression in the cargo hold almost suffocating. The ozone scent intensified, sharp and clean. "You are now tethered to the spark, to me, and to all we represent." She reached out a hand, not towards Kale, but towards the space between them, a subtle, shimmering gesture. Kale saw, or rather felt, a faint ripple in the air, where her hand moved, a wave of energy that touched him, not physically, but deep inside, a low thrumming that mirrored the resonance with the baby. It wasn't unpleasant, precisely, but it was invasive, a mapping of his inner landscape. He shivered involuntarily. "Stop doing that," he said, his voice tight. "I don't like being scanned." "It is not a scan," she replied, her hand retracting. "It is acknowledgement. The resonance recognizes you as father." The word felt too big, too heavy, for his shoulders. Kale, the guy who lived on stale ration packs and engine grease, who ran from entanglements like they were plague. "Look," Kale tried again, trying to inject some logic into the surreal situation. "I get it, prophecy, destiny, alien dad stuff. But I'm just a guy who flies a rusty ship. I don't do empires. I don't do chosen ones. And I sure as hell don't do family. Not anymore." He looked away, towards the bulkheads,
anywhere but at her or the baby. A familiar ache settled in his chest, the old wound throbbing.
"Onto the universe cares little for your preferences," she stated flatly. Cutting through his attempt at emotional deflection, her voice was softer now, but the intensity remained. "What is done is done. The bond is forming, whether you accept it or not, and it places you in grave danger." This caught his attention. He looked back at her. Danger? From who? From those who believe the spark's lineage must remain pure, she explained, her posture straightening, becoming rigid again. Those who see your involvement as contamination, as a perversion of the prophecy. They will seek to rectify the situation by eliminating you and reclaiming the spark. Kale's mind finally clicked into gear, the threat overriding the sheer absurdity of the situation. This wasn't just about weird alien spirituality. It was about survival, his survival, and the baby's. He tightened his grip on the disruptor again, eyes narrowing. "So you're saying they're coming for the kid? And for me? They are likely already tracking us," she confirmed. A subtle shift in the air pressure, confirming her words. A distant sensor pinged Kale, hadn't registered, filtered through her alien senses. "My arrival masked our joint signature, for a short duration, but that window is closing. Oh, we must move." "Move?" Kale scoffed. "Move where? And why the hell should I move with you? You're part of the problem. I am his guardian," she said, her voice regaining its initial commanding tone. "And now you are his other guardian. Whether you wish it or not, our fates are intertwined. For the spark's safety, and now, for your own, you must come with me, or stay here and be destroyed." He looked at the baby, sleeping soundly, the faint glow a steady pulse in the dim room. He looked at the woman, impossibly alien, radiating power and ancient purpose. He looked at his disruptor, a useless toy, against an empire, or whatever force she represented. His ship vibrated gently around them, a fragile bubble in a hostile galaxy. He was cornered, not just physically, but existentially. The low hum in his bones intensified, a pulling sensation towards the woman and the baby, a strange, undeniable connection, forming against his will. The airlock hissed softly behind her, a reminder of their precarious position. He felt the tension coil tighter in his gut, an external threat now layered over the bizarre internal one. His hand trembled slightly on the disruptor. He had to make a choice, and none of the options looked good. "So where exactly are we moving to?" Kale asked, the sarcasm, a thin shield over genuine fear and utter bewilderment. He wasn't sure if the question was giving in or just buying time. He still held the disruptor, but it felt less like a weapon and more like a crutch. She turned fully towards the cockpit area, her movements efficient and purposeful. "We must reach the Riven worlds," she stated, her voice softer, though still resonating with that strange layered quality. "There are sanctuaries there, places where the resonance of the spark is shielded, where we might find temporary refuge." The Riven worlds. Kale felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The Riven worlds were a cluster of shattered planets and asteroid fields, notoriously unstable and crawling with everything from corporate mercenaries to forgotten cults. It was a graveyard, not a sanctuary. That's suicide. The debris fields alone would tear the rust bucket apart. "Your vessel is inadequate," she agreed without hesitation. It wasn't an insult, just a statement of fact that stung anyway. "We will not be taking your vessel. My transport awaits. It is less conspicuous than a standard Tyrian cruiser and better shielded." Kale stared at her. She had a ship, waiting outside, just hovering there while she walked onto his. It added another layer to her impossible arrival. "Less conspicuous? Is that like code for ancient stealth bomber? How did you even get here? How did you find me?" "The spark's resonance guided me," she explained, turning back to him, her form less a silhouette now, the internal light revealing subtle contours beneath the shimmering surface of her cloak. Graceful lines, an elongation of limb that spoke of different gravity, perhaps. "And the bond you formed, however inadvertently, created a harmonic echo. It was like following a signal flare in the void. She paused, and Kale felt that internal touch again, softer this time, almost curious. Your resonance is chaotic, disjointed, yet strong where it touches the sparks. Kale resisted the urge to rub the place on his chest where he felt the strange sensation. Yeah, well, my life's been pretty chaotic. Comes with the territory. He gestured around the cramped, cluttered cargo hold. This is my territory. Finding salvage, keeping the lights on, staying off the radar. Not whatever this is. She stepped closer to the crib, her glow pulsing with a soft, protective rhythm that mirrored the baby's faint light. Kale felt the resonance between them strengthen, pulling at him, a strange sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. It was terrifying, this she said.
Ah.
Her voice low and intimate, though her gaze was still fixed on the infant. Is destiny, or perhaps simply a consequence of your actions? It matters not. What matters is the present danger and the future safety of the spark. She reached a hand into the crib, and Kale watched, mesmerized, as her shimmering fingers gently touched the baby's small form. The baby stirred, and its own internal light brightened, pulsing in perfect sync with hers, creating a miniature nova of gentle energy in the corner of the ship. Kale felt a jolt run through him, a physical manifestation of the bond she'd spoken of, a warm current flowing from the baby to her, and then through him, connecting them in a way that defied logic. See, she said, looking at him over her shoulder, her face still mostly obscured, but her gaze sharp and unwavering. The bond is already deepening. You feel it, do you not? The connection. Kale did feel it, a dizzying mix of panic, responsibility, and something else, something warm and terrifyingly tender directed towards the glowing infant, and towards her. He lowered the disruptor slowly, resting it against his leg. It felt pointless now. He was caught. Yeah, I feel something, he admitted reluctantly. Feels less like a bond, and more like I've been infected with something. She almost smiled then, or perhaps it was just a trick of the light shifting on her form, a subtle curve that hinted at amusement. It is not an infection, human. It is inclusion. The carrion resonance is complex. It binds individuals, families, entire lineages, and now, it seeks to bind you. Because of the spark, she turned back to him fully, and Kale could make out the lines of her face now. The gentle slope of a cheekbone, the curve of a mouth that looked capable of both fierce command and surprising tenderness. Her eyes remained pools of light, unreadable, but intense. My designation is Lyra, and yours, Protector. Kale swallowed, the name feeling strange on his tongue. Kale, Kale, she repeated, the sound different in her voice, a soft resonance that felt like his name was being sung into existence. It sent another shiver down his spine, not of fear this time, but something else, something that tightened his chest in a different way. Very well, Kale, we have little time. Gather what sustenance your culture requires, and prepare to depart. Quickly, they are closing in. As if on cue, a low thrumming started somewhere in the void outside his ship, a sound Kale recognized instantly as high-velocity pursuit engines, closer than he'd anticipated. He looked at Lyra, then at the baby, then back at his ship's battered consoles. He was a scavenger, a runner, not a father, or a destined protector. But the engine noise outside was real, the threat was real, and the strange warm pull in his chest, connecting him to this impossible alien woman, and the glowing baby, was undeniably real. He shoved the disruptor back into its holster. All right, don't rush me. I gotta grab stuff. He moved past her, heading for the small galley unit, acutely aware of her presence behind him, of the way her resonance seemed to fill the small space, creating a strange charged intimacy, even in the face of imminent danger. He felt watched, assessed, and for the first time in a long time, not entirely alone. The tension was palpable, a mix of adrenaline, fear, and a bizarre nascent curiosity about the glowing woman now standing between him and his only escape. Kale grabbed a few ration bars, 2 sealed water pouches,
and his worn survival kit, stuffing them into a small satchel. Every nerve ending felt raw, aware of Lyra's proximity, the subtle shift in air current as she moved towards the baby again, the low hum that intensified whenever she was near the crib. He could sense the engine noise outside growing louder, closer, a predator's purr. He needed to move, needed to escape this impossible situation, but the logistics of abandoning his ship, his only home and means of survival, felt like ripping off a limb. "My ship," he said, turning back to her, the satchel slung over his shoulder. "I can't just leave her." Lyra was carefully lifting the baby from the crib, holding it gently against her chest. The child's glow pulsed brighter now, bathing her face in soft light. Cale finally saw her features clearly. Smooth, elegant contours unlike any human's, delicate ridges above expressive, luminous eyes that held ancient knowledge and current worry. Her skin shimmered with an inner light that rippled and changed subtly with her emotions. It wasn't bioluminescence in the traditional sense, it was part of her, deep within. "Your vessel is compromised," she stated, her voice firm but not dismissive. "They will find it. It is a beacon of your presence, a liability." "But, she's all I have," Cale protested, the words coming out, more vulnerable than he intended. He'd salvaged the rust bucket from a derelict yard, poured years of his life into keeping her running, patching her wounds, making her his own. She was more than a ship. She was his sanctuary, his history. Lyra met his gaze, her luminous eyes holding a surprising depth of understanding. He saw a flicker of something that might be empathy, or perhaps just recognition of his attachment. "Possessions tie us to the material plane," she said softly, her voice like the low thrum of distant engines. "They can be replaced. Life, Cale, and the spark's destiny. These cannot." She shifted the baby slightly, cradling it against her chest. The baby whimpered softly, and its light pulsed fretfully. Lyra made a low sound, a resonant hum that seemed to flow from her into the baby. Lean out towards Cale, a wave of calming energy that smoothed the edges of his fear. The baby settled almost instantly. Cale felt the effect too, a subtle easing of the tension coiling in his gut, replaced by that strange warm pull of connection. What was that?" he asked, mesmerized. "Resonance," she explained. "Communication beyond sound. Comfort. It flows between us, Cale, as you feel it." He did feel it.
A sense of shared presence, a unique kind of intimacy that had nothing to do with touch, yet felt deeply personal. His jaded, solitary core felt challenged, nudged awake by this unexpected current of connection. "Okay," he conceded. The word heavy. He knew she was right about the ship. It hurt to admit it. "Okay, we go. But you owe me a ship, Lyra, or enough credits to buy one." She inclined her head slightly. Survival is the immediate currency. Reparations can be discussed when the spark is safe. She moved towards the airlock, the baby cradled in her arms, her form seeming to melt into the shadows near the hatch. "Come, Cale, before they break through your minimal shielding." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, looking back at the cockpit, the worn pilot's seat, the familiar console he'd spent countless hours staring at. Then he looked at Lyra, a luminous figure holding a glowing infant, waiting for him. The low growl of the approaching ships outside was undeniable. He tightened his grip on the satchel and followed her, stepping into the small airlock. The space was even more confined now with both of them inside. The scent of ozone and moonlight was overpowering, mingling with the faint, sweet smell of the baby. He could feel the heat radiating from Lyra's form, the subtle vibration of her presence, the strange, intoxicating resonance that bound them. He stood too close, acutely aware of her body, so different yet radiating a powerful, undeniable energy that drew him in. The airlock doors cycled, sealing them inside the small chamber. He felt a flush crawl up his neck. This was intimate in a way he wasn't prepared for. Squeezed into a metal box with an alien woman and a baby, on the run from an empire. The airlock outer door opened, revealing not the black of space, but the interior of another, sleeker vessel, its entrance hatch shimmering with an energy field. They stepped through. The interior of her ship was minimalist, all soft, curved surfaces, and ambient light that pulsed gently. It felt alive. The airlock sealed behind them with a soft thrum. Kale looked around, taking in the alien design, the lack of visible controls, the subtle hum of power that permeated everything. Lyra moved towards a central console, which shimmered into existence as she approached, responding to her touch with pulses of light. The baby was still cradled securely against her. "This way," she said, her voice a low murmur in the quiet ship. She led him towards a small recessed area, with two contoured seats that seemed to mold themselves to their forms as they sat. Lyra settled into one, still holding the baby. Kale sat in the other, which felt strangely comfortable, supporting him in ways his old seat never had. The ship hummed, a deep resonant frequency that vibrated through the seats, through him. He felt the strange bond strengthen again, a sense of being enveloped in a shared field of energy with Lyra and the baby. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, her luminous eyes dimming slightly, and Kale felt a cascade of sensory input that wasn't his own. The ship's external sensors, the vastness of space, the distant pinpricks of stars, and the faint but growing signatures of the pursuit vessels. She was connecting with her ship, somehow. "They have reached your old vessel," she stated, her voice calm. Kale felt a pang of loss, but the surging adrenaline and the sheer alienness of his surroundings pushed it back. "They will realize shortly that it is empty. Their primary target remains the spark. Their secondary target, you." Her eyes opened, luminous and focused. "We will make a jump, quickly. Hold the spark." She gently placed the baby in Kale's arms. He fumbled for a moment, unused to the weight, the warmth, the surprising firmness of the tiny form. The baby's internal light pulsed against his chest, and the resonance surged, stronger than ever, linking him directly to the child, and through the child, to Lyra. He could feel their presence now, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically. It was overwhelming, intimate, in a way he'd never experienced. The baby made a soft cooing sound, nestled against him. "Hold him close," Lyra instructed, her voice soft. "His resonance stabilizes the jump coordinates. Your presence reinforces the bond, reinforces the bond." That phrase again. He held the baby tighter, feeling the tiny life force against him, the strange energy binding him to this alien child, this alien woman, this impossible situation. Lyra's hands moved across the shimmering console, a silent dance of light and energy. The hum of the ship deepened, vibrating through Kale's entire body. Outside the viewports, which had appeared seamlessly in the curved walls, the stars stretched and distorted, swirling into streaks of light, calculating trajectory based on spark resonance and your harmonic input. "Kale," Lyra murmured, her gaze fixed on the swirling light. "Your presence is useful." "Glad I could be useful," Kale mumbled, shifting the baby to a more comfortable position. The child felt surprisingly solid, warm. He felt a surge of protectiveness, fierce and unexpected. It was his kid now. The universe in its infinite weirdness had decided that. The ship gave a silent lurch, not physical, but temporal, a shift in reality that made Kale's stomach drop, and his vision blur for a split second. Then the viewports showed a different starfield, slightly askew, unfamiliar. They were gone. "Jump complete," Lyra announced, a faint exhalation escaping her lips. The light in her eyes dimmed slightly, as if the effort had taken something from her. "We are further from the pursuit, but not unseen. Our resonance signature, though muted, is detectable." She turned to look at Kale, at the baby nestled against his chest. Her gaze lingered there for a long moment, unreadable. Kale held the baby, feeling the small heart beat against his. He was on an alien ship, millions of miles from home, with an alien woman and a baby he'd found, running from an empire he didn't know existed, until an hour ago. He was the father of the chosen ones. The sheer mind-bending reality
of it settled over him. But beneath the fear and confusion, that strange, powerful resonance pulsed, connecting him to Lyra and the baby. It wasn't just a bond, it felt like a lifeline in the vast, empty dark. He looked at Lyra, her luminous eyes fixed on him, and felt a different kind of tension build, something less about immediate danger, and more about the complex, unexpected entanglement their lives had become. They were linked by prophecy, by danger, and by the small glowing life in his arms. The silence in the cabin stretched, filled only by the ship's soft hum and the quiet presence of the three of them, bound together in the heart of the void. The journey to the riven worlds was a blur of short, disorienting jumps and long stretches of quiet running through the void, always aware of the distant echoes of pursuit. Kale spent most of the time in the recessed seats, holding the baby. Lyra navigated, interacting with her ship through shimmering consoles and subtle gestures that Kale couldn't understand. Dialogue was sparse, punctuated by Lyra's concise updates on their status, and Kale's bewildered questions about Kyrian culture, the spark, and the prophecy. So wait, this chosen one's thing, Kale asked during one of the quiet stretches, the baby asleep against his chest, its glow soft and steady. What is he supposed to do? Is he gonna save the galaxy? End a war? What's the gig? Lyra turned from the main console, her expression unreadable in the soft ambient light. The spark is potential, she said, her voice resonating with a deep respect. He is the culmination of generations of lineage refinement. He holds the key to our species' future adaptation. The galaxy is in flux, Kale. Resonances are shifting, collapsing, merging. The spark is meant to bridge these shifts, to guide us through the next great transition. If he reaches maturity unspoiled meaning, not raised by a sarcastic human scavenger. Kale guessed, a wry smile touching his lips. Lyra was silent for a moment. Your involvement was unforeseen. The prophecy is ancient, its interpretation rigid among the high lineages. They believe only pure Kyrian resonance can guide the spark correctly. Your chaotic resonance, they see it as a disruption, a potential corruption, chaos. Kale felt a defensive pang. Oh, my resonance is just flexible, adaptable. It's kept me alive. It is loud, she stated, not as criticism, but observation, and unpredictable. Like the void itself, she turned back to the console, her luminous eyes tracking unseen data streams. But the prophecy is also specific. He who finds the spark alone in the void, untouched by Kyrian hands since his transition,
shall be bonded as father, his chaotic resonance grounding the spark's potential, shielding him from the turbulent universal shifts during maturation. Your chaos is in fact the key to his survival. Kale stared at her back, processing this. His screwed-up life, his jaded detachment, his chaotic nature, it was all suddenly part of some ancient alien destiny. It felt like a joke, a cruel cosmic prank. But holding the baby, feeling the warm, constant presence of its life force against him, feeling the strange, undeniable pull towards Lyra, it was hard to dismiss entirely. So my screwed-up life is finally good for something, he muttered under his breath. Lyra chuckled softly, a low, resonant sound that vibrated in the air. Perhaps it is the universe's way of balancing the harmony. You provide the anchor, I provide the lineage and protection. She turned to him again, and this time, her luminous eyes seemed to hold his gaze, seeking something. It is not an unwelcome development to have another share the burden of the spark. Kale felt a warmth spread through his chest, unrelated to the baby's glow. Her admission, quiet and understated, felt significant. Shared burden. He hadn't shared anything important with anyone in a long time. The strange intimacy of their situation, forced by circumstance and amplified by the resonance that bound them, was starting to chip away at his carefully constructed walls. He looked at her, really looked at her, the subtle shifting of light on her form, the elegant lines of her face, the depth in her luminous eyes. There was a raw power about her, a sense of ancient strength, but also a weariness, a burden she carried alone until he stumbled into her path. It's a lot to take in, Kale admitted, his voice softer than before. Father of the chosen one.
Me, just
Kale, just Kale, who saved the spark.
Lyra corrected, her gaze steady. That is enough, for now. The silence returned, filled with the hum of the ship and the gentle pulse of the baby's light. But the tension had shifted. It wasn't just about the external threat now. It was about the burgeoning complex connection between the three of them. Lyra's admission, the shared responsibility for the baby, the bizarre acceptance of his chaotic resonance as essential. It had opened a door. Kale felt a pull towards her. That was more than just the resonance. It was curiosity, a strange sense of familiarity, despite their vast differences, and a growing undeniable physical awareness. He was acutely conscious of the confined space, the shared air, the way her energy seemed to wrap around him. He found himself watching her movements at the console, the grace of her hands, the subtle shifts in her form, the play of light on her skin. The initial fear was still there, but it was now intertwined with something else entirely, something that felt both dangerous and exhilarating. He held the baby closer, feeling its warmth, its light, a physical manifestation of the intricate, impossible web that now connected him to Lyra. He wondered what other uses his chaotic resonance might have in this strange new reality. Days blurred into nights. In the deep void between jumps, the rust bucket was long gone, a ghost on the sensors. They were solely on Lyra's ship now, a vessel as alien and enigmatic as she was. The environment was stark, minimalist, yet felt strangely comfortable, adapting subtly to their needs. Kale spent hours holding the baby, whose name Lyra revealed was Lyra, meaning first light, in the ancient Kyrian tongue. Alara's presence was a constant soft warmth against him, a living anchor in his surreal new existence. Dialogue flowed more freely now, less about exposition and more about tentative connection. Kale, forced out of his shell by the sheer absurdity of his situation, found himself talking, sharing fragments of his life, growing up on a dusty mining colony, the ache of losing family, the loneliness of running. Lyra listened with an intensity that was both unnerving and strangely soothing. She shared less about herself, her past hinted at through cryptic remarks about duty, lineage, and the weight of expectation. But her presence was a constant communication in itself, a silent language of resonance and subtle shifts in her inner light. Physical closeness was unavoidable in the ship's limited living area. They shared nutrient paste that tasted vaguely of star anise and metallic tang, sitting across from each other, the baby nestled between them. There was no separate sleeping quarters, only recessed berths that contoured to their forms. Kale would lie there, the baby breathing softly beside him, acutely aware of Lyra in the berth opposite, the soft pulse of her inner light, a gentle rhythm in the darkness. The resonance between them had become a constant hum, a low frequency that felt like being wrapped in a warm blanket, unsettling and comforting all at once. One cycle, after a particularly close call with a scout ship, Lyra evaded with breathtaking skill. The adrenaline lingered, sharp and buzzing. Alara was asleep, her glow soft. Kale was in his berth, Lyra in hers, the air thick with unspoken words and heightened awareness. That was close, Kale said into the quiet, his voice rough. They are persistent, Lyra replied, her voice a low resonance from the other berth. The high lineages consider this a grave matter, a cosmic imbalance caused by a human finding. A baby, Kale muttered, shaking his head. Still blows my mind. A small silence, then Lyra's voice softer still. Does it? Kale hesitated. He felt the pull, the strange inexorable connection. He felt the warmth of the baby beside him, the subtle anchoring resonance. He felt Lyra across the short distance, her energy reaching out to him. It still defied logic, but it felt real, less than it did yesterday, he admitted quietly. Elira, she's just a kid. And you? He trailed off. What about her? She was ancient duty and fierce protection, and luminous eyes that saw into him. She was the ozone scent, and the resonant voice and the unsettling, intoxicating feel of her energy. He was drawn to her in a way that had nothing to do with logic or safety, and everything to do with the raw, exposed parts of himself he thought he'd buried. Lyra was silent, again, but Cale felt a shift in her resonance, a subtle change that felt like anticipation, hesitation. My resonance, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it filled the space between them. Does it bother you, Cale? The way it binds? It bothered him because it felt good. It bothered him because it cracked open the carefully constructed shell of his solitude. It's new, he said truthfully, intense, like being seen all the way through. Yes, she confirmed. That is the nature of the bond. Truth without words. He shifted in the berth, suddenly restless. I'm not used to it. Nor I, she admitted. Human resonance is a mystery. We are accustomed to the predictable harmonies of our own kind. Yours is a wild chord, beautiful in its own way. Beautiful. The word hung in the air. Beautiful. Chaotic Cale.
He almost laughed, but it would have sounded shaky. He looked across the dim space towards her berth, towards the soft pulse of her inner light. He couldn't see her clearly, but he felt her presence like a physical weight, heavy with unspoken things. Lyra, he started, unsure what he was going to say. His body felt strangely heavy, yet charged with energy. The close call, the shared confinement, the resonant bond, it was all converging, creating a powerful eddy of tension between them. She made a soft sound, a low hum that wasn't language but communication, invitation. Cale felt a surge of heat, a different kind of warmth than Elara's gentle glow. It was desire, raw and sharp, cutting through his confusion and fear. He pushed himself up, moving silently from his berth. The short distance across the cabin felt vast, yet also insignificant. He reached her berth, looking down at her form, still partially obscured by the ambient light, but the contours he had seen before were clearer now, the elegant lines of her body defined by the soft glow within. He knelt beside her, hesitant. Lyra, she reached out a hand, her fingers shimmering slightly in the dimness. She didn't touch him, but hovered inches away, and he felt her resonance intensify, a powerful wave of acceptance, of longing, that mirrored his own. It was an invitation, clearer than any words. He leaned closer, drawn by an irresistible force, by the strange, beautiful chaos she seemed to see in him, by the profound, silent intimacy of the bond they shared through the sleeping child. The air between them crackled with unspoken needs. Years of solitude, meeting ancient purpose in the quiet heart of an alien ship. The tension was no longer about survival or prophecy. It was primal, human and alien, raw and undeniable. He reached out his own hand, fingers brushing against the shimmering surface of her skin, and felt a jolt, a surge of energy, that was both shocking and exhilarating. There was no turning back. His fingers finally made contact with her skin, and the sensation was unlike anything he had ever felt. It wasn't skin as he knew it. It was smooth, cool, yet vibrated with that intense internal light and warmth. It felt like touching solidified starlight, yielding yet firm. The resonance between them flared, a silent symphony of connection that bypassed thought and went straight to bone and blood and soul. Lyra made a soft sound, a sigh that was also a low, resonant hum, and her body shifted, inviting him closer. In the confined space of the berth, their bodies met, awkward at first, two vastly different forms, navigating ancient desires under the strange glow of the baby and the ship's ambient light. There was no fumbling, only an urgent, desperate seeking. Cale's hands explored her form, tracing the elegant lines he'd glimpsed earlier, the subtle ridges and curves that were alien and breathtakingly beautiful. Her skin shifted and pulsed beneath his touch, responding to his touch, to his emotions, mirroring the intensity that built between them. Lyra's touch was different, not probing, but encompassing.
her hands moving over him with a strange knowing grace, mapping his form, his energy, accepting him fully. There were no clothes to shed, only the shimmering material that seemed part of Lyra herself, yielding effortlessly to his touch, flowing around them like liquid light. The scent of ozone and moonlight filled his senses, intoxicating, overwhelming. Her lips met his, and the kiss was deep, resonant, a melding not just of mouths, but of something deeper, a transfer of energy, a recognition of shared resonance. Cale felt himself drowning in the sensations, the touch of her unique skin, the scent, the taste, the overpowering feel of her presence, the raw electric current that surged between them. He felt her consciousness touch his again, not as a scan this time, but as a joining, a dance of awareness that communicated acceptance, desire, a deep, aching need that mirrored his own. Years of walled-off emotion, of forced solitude, crumbled in the face of this overwhelming alien intimacy. This wasn't just physical release. It was emotional exposure on a level he'd never conceived. He held her close, his body responding with a primal need that shocked him with its intensity. Lyra guided him with movements that were both powerful and yielding, her body moving with a grace born of a different evolutionary path, yet utterly responsive to the rhythm that developed between them. The resonance in the cabin pulsed with their shared intensity, filling the small space with a vibrant, living energy. The sleeping baby's glow seemed to brighten, as if recognizing and accepting the bond being forged between its protectors. Their intimacy was raw, sensual, driven by the unique circumstances of their connection. The shared danger, the profound, unsettling resonance, the sheer, undeniable attraction that had built in the charged atmosphere of their shared escape. There was no pretense, no hesitation, just an urgent, desperate need to connect, to feel, to lose themselves in the shared moment before the dangers of their reality caught up to them again. Cale felt his own chaos meet her ancient harmony, not clashing, but intertwining, creating a new, unpredictable pattern. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the small berth, the ship's soft hum a gentle counterpoint to the rapid beat of Cale's heart. Lyra's skin still shimmered under his touch, cool and vibrant. The scent of ozone and moonlight lingered in the air. Alara's light pulsed steadily beside them. That was, Cale started, searching for a word that didn't exist. Necessary, Lyra finished for him, her voice low and resonant. Her hand rested on his chest, and he felt the soft, steady pulse of her inner light against him. The bond strengthens through vulnerability, through shared experience, and through this, an alien woman, a human man, bound by a child in a prophecy, finding solace and connection in the heart of the void, running from an empire that sought to destroy them. It was insane. It was everything he'd ever run from. And yet, lying there, feeling her against him, feeling the quiet presence of the baby nearby, feeling the strange, warm resonance that connected them, Cale felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. A dangerous, precarious peace, but peace nonetheless. The tension hadn't vanished. It had transformed. It was no longer just about survival. It was about protecting this fragile, impossible connection they had forged. The external threat remained, a distant echo in the void. But for now, in the quiet intimacy of the ship, they were just Cale and Lyra, two beings from different worlds, bound together by fate and choice, and a surprising, fierce tenderness that had bloomed in the unlikeliest of places. He tightened his arm around her, pulling her closer, accepting the impossibility of it all. The fragile peace didn't last. It couldn't. The universe rarely allowed such moments to linger when empires were involved. Days later, still navigating the treacherous approaches to the riven worlds, Lyra's calm navigation was broken by a sharp intake of breath, a sudden surge in her inner light that radiated distress. They have adapted their pursuit signature, she stated, her voice tight, the resonance frayed. They are using a harmonic filter keyed to the spark's resonance, and to yours, Cale. The bond is guiding them to us. Cale's stomach dropped. My resonance? How? It is unique, Lyra explained, her luminous eyes wide with alarm as she manipulated the console. chaotic as we discussed, but now intertwined with the spark's fundamental frequency. It creates a signature they can track, even through the deepest void. So my useful chaos is now painting a target on our backs. Kale muttered, the bitter irony not lost on him. He looked at Alara, sleeping soundly in the small travel crib Lyra had conjured from the ship's materializers. The baby's soft glow was a beacon. It was always a risk, Lyra said, her voice regaining some control, though the distress lingered in her resonance. The purity fundamentalists predicted your resonance would be a weakness. They were correct. That stung. My resonance isn't a weakness, Kale retorted, defensive. It's kept me alive when their pure harmony would have gotten me killed out here. In your void, yes, she conceded. But the concession was brittle. In our domain, resonance is harmony, predictability. Your chaos is disruptive. It is a flaw they seek to exploit. A flaw. The word echoed his own deepest fears about himself, the root of his jadedness and his running. He felt a sudden sharp emotional distance open between them, a chasm born of cultural clash and personal insecurity. The intimacy they had shared felt fragile, threatened by this fundamental difference, this alien judgment of his very nature. So what do we do? He asked. His voice clipped. We must break the direct link, Lyra said, her fingers flying over the console, mask the combined signature. It requires a specific resonance shield, found only in the Riven worlds. We must reach the sanctuary point. Can we make it? Lyra hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty in her luminous eyes. The tracking is precise now. They are closing faster than anticipated. She turned from the console, her gaze fixed on Kale, on the baby. There is a risk, Kale, a significant one. The shield resonance is volatile. It could disrupt the bond permanently. The bond, the strange, deep connection that had given him an impossible family, a purpose and a breathtaking, unsettling intimacy with this alien woman. Disrupt it permanently. The thought sent a jolt of panic through him. He looked at Alara, at Lyra, feeling the pull, the warmth, the connection. What does disrupt the bonds mean? He asked, his voice low. It means the resonance, linking you to Alara, could be severed. Lyra explained, her voice soft, heavy with meaning. You would no longer be the designated father. The prophecy, your role in it, would be undone. And their connection, their strange, fragile intimacy, forged in shared danger and unexpected vulnerability. He didn't need to ask. If the bond to the spark was severed, the foundation of their relationship would be gone. It was the mid-story conflict she had spoken of, the risk of losing everything they had found. And your connection to her, he asked, his voice barely a whisper, nodding towards Alara. Mine is lineage, Lyra said, ancient. It cannot be severed, only weakened. But yours, she trailed off, her luminous eyes conveying the gravity of the situation. Kale felt a wave of fear, not just for their lives, but for the possibility of being cast adrift again.
Yes.
Of losing the anchor he had so reluctantly accepted. He looked at the baby, its innocent glow, then at Lyra, the strength and vulnerability warring in her face. This was the test. This was where their forced entanglement became a choice. So we run the risk of losing the bond, losing this, he gestured, vaguely between them, to maybe survive. Kale said, the words flat. To give the spark a chance, Lyra corrected, her voice firm. His survival is paramount. Our bond is a secondary consequence. Secondary consequence. The phrase hit him like a physical blow. Their intimacy, their connection, reduced to a consequence. The emotional distance snapped back into place, sharper than before. He'd allowed himself to feel, to connect, to believe this impossible thing might be real, only to be reminded that he was, ultimately, a means to an end, a necessary chaotic anchor for a prophecy. Right, Kale said, his voice cold. His survival. Got it. Just point me to the shield thing. He stood up, the sudden movement jarring in the quiet cabin. He avoided Lyra's gaze, focusing instead on the shimmering viewports. The stars outside seemed colder, more distant. Lyra didn't respond immediately. Cale felt her gaze on his back, felt the complex mix of determination, regret, and something akin to pain radiating from her. The air in the cabin grew heavy, thick with unspoken things. The intimacy that had bloomed was now laced with the bitter taste of potential loss and the sharp sting of being called a flaw. The external threat was pressing, but the true danger in that moment was the widening emotional chasm between them. He braced himself for the jump, for the potential severance, feeling more alone than he had since Lyra had first materialized on his ship. The jump into the Riven worlds was brutal, not the smooth phase shift Cale was getting used to, but a violent wrenching sensation that felt like being torn apart and stitched back together inside out. The ship groaned around them, protesting the unstable energies of the shattered sector.
Thus, when the viewports cleared, they showed a chaotic landscape of swirling dust clouds, jagged asteroid fragments the size of moons, and the glowing, shattered remnants of what were once planets. The air inside the cabin felt thick with residual energy, making Alara's glow pulse erratically. Lyra was hunched over the console, her inner light flickering with strain. Cale felt the bond vibrate painfully, stretched thin, a frayed rope over an abyss. He held Alara, murmuring reassurances he wasn't sure he believed himself. The emotional distance from Lyra was still there, a cold knot in his gut, but the shared physical ordeal of the jump forced a different kind of connection, a silent acknowledgement of mutual reliance. "We are here," Lyra announced, her voice strained. "The shield location is coordinates locked on the largest remnant, but the jump was difficult. The ship's resonance core is unstable." "Unstable how?" Cale asked, trying to inject some of his usual pragmatism into the surreal situation. "It is oscillating," she explained, searching for the right human terms. "Between my frequency and yours. The shield resonance will amplify this. It could destabilize completely, and that means the ship could unravel." Lyra finished, her luminous eyes meeting his. The unspoken words hung in the air. "We could die." "Great," Cale said, the sarcasm automatic, a reflex against fear. "So we risk losing the bond to survive, and we might not even survive the attempt. This just gets better and better." Lyra didn't respond to the sarcasm. She was focused, her hands moving with renewed urgency over the console. "We must reach the shield point. It is our only chance." The pursuers, they navigated the jump faster than anticipated. "They are behind us." Cale felt a fresh wave of adrenaline. He looked out at the chaotic, beautiful graveyard of a system. This was their last stand. He looked at Alara, at her trusting, innocent face bathed in her own light. And he looked at Lyra, her luminous eyes filled with a mixture of determination and fear, a reflection of his own emotions. Despite the rift between them, the knowledge that she saw his resonance as a flaw, he felt the pull towards her, the fierce need to protect her as well as the child. The bond, even strained, was still there, a fragile thread connecting their disparate lives. They navigated the treacherous debris field, dodging massive chunks of rock and twisted metal that glowed with residual energy. Lyra's skill was breathtaking, her ship moving with a silent grace that defied the chaos surrounding them. Cale watched, mesmerized, the emotional distance momentarily forgotten in the face of shared danger. As they approached the largest remnant, a world shattered but not destroyed, a vast swirling nebula of energy pulsed at its core. "The shield point," Lyra identified, pointing towards the nebula. "We must enter the resonance field. The ship, its instability will worsen." As they got closer, Cale felt the ship begin to hum louder, a discordant vibration that resonated painfully in his bones. Alara stirred, whimpering. Lyra's inner light flickered erratically. Cale felt the bond stretch tighter, pulled taut between his chaos, Alara's potential, and Lyra's burdened harmony. "Lyra, are you sure about this?" he asked, the words torn from him by the physical stress of the ship's oscillations. "There is no other way," she said, her voice strained. "Hold Alara tight. Brace yourself, Cale."
The ship plunged into the swirling nebula of energy. The discordant hum intensified, becoming a shriek that seemed to tear at the fabric of reality. Cale felt the bond snap, a sharp, painful severance that left him feeling suddenly, utterly alone, adrift in the universe. The warmth of Alara's light against his chest felt distant, disconnected. The pull towards Lyra vanished, replaced by a terrifying emptiness. He looked at her, her form flickering like a dying star, and felt a profound sense of loss, sharper than any physical pain. "Lyra," he cried out, reaching for her. She looked at him, her luminous eyes wide, filled with grief. "Regret, the bond, it is severed," she whispered, her voice weak, barely audible over the ship's shriek. "Your resonance, decoupled." He held Alara, but the resonant connection was gone. He was just Cale again, a human holding an alien baby. The ship screamed, threatening to tear itself apart. Outside, through the distorted viewports, Cale saw the faint signatures of the pursuit vessels entering the nebula behind them. They were still coming, and the shield, the one thing that was supposed to save them, had seemingly cost Cale everything. He looked at Lyra, her form wavering, and knew that the biggest fight wasn't over the baby or the prophecy, but over whether the fragile connection they had found could survive the deliberate, painful breaking of their shared bond. The ship didn't unravel, not entirely. It held, screaming and vibrating, suspended in the heart of the resonance nebula. The pursuit ships, designed for the predictable harmonies of the void, faltered and scattered at the edge of the chaotic field, unable to follow without risking their own destruction. They were safe, for now, but the cost was immediate and stark. Cale held Alara. The baby's glow was steady again, no longer erratically pulsing, but Cale felt nothing of the deep, resonant connection he'd grown accustomed to. He was physically holding the child, providing warmth and support, but the unique energetic link was gone. He was just a man holding a baby. He was decoupled. His chaotic resonance was once again just his own, a solitary hum in the silence. Lyra sagged against the console, her inner light dim and weak. The vibrant energy that usually radiated from her was almost extinguished. She looked at Cale, at Alara, her luminous eyes holding a deep, aching sadness. "The shield, it worked," she whispered, her voice raspy. "It masked Alara's pure resonance, and yours. They cannot track us here." "At a price," Cale said, his voice flat. He didn't look at Alara, couldn't bear to face the absence of the bond he had felt with her. He looked at Lyra, at the exhaustion etched on her alien face. "My resonance is decoupled. The bond is broken." She nodded, a slow, weary movement. Yes, it was necessary, to protect the spark. She avoided his gaze, looking at the baby in his arms. "You are no longer father. The prophecy is incomplete. You are simply Cale, the human who found him. Simply Cale." The phrase resonated with a painful emptiness. He was back to where he started, a solitary figure, adrift. But it was worse now, because for a brief, intense time, he had known what it felt like, not to be alone. He had felt the warmth of Alara's bond, the unsettling, intoxicating connection with Lyra, and now it was gone. "Simply Cale," he repeated, the words bitter. He felt the physical reality of holding Alara, the responsibility for her survival, but the deep intrinsic connection, the reason for that responsibility, according to the prophecy, was severed. What was he to her now? What was he to Lyra? Lyra pushed herself away from the console, her movements stiff, lacking their usual grace. She moved towards them, reaching out a trembling hand towards Alara. Cale hesitated, for a fraction of a second, a possessiveness, born not of resonance, but of shared experience and protectiveness, making him reluctant to let go. But the bond was broken. His role was ended. He gently transferred Alara to Lyra's arms. Lyra held the baby close, her form wrapping protectively around the child. Alara's light pulsed, syncing with Lyra's faint glow, a dance of pure Waterian harmony. Cale watched, an outsider looking in. He felt a pang of loss so sharp, it stole his breath. The intimacy they had shared, built on that impossible bond, felt like a dream, a fragile construct that had shattered under pressure. Lyra looked up at him then, her luminous eyes filled with an emotion Cale couldn't name. Regret, gratitude, sorrow. Cale, she said, her voice soft, barely a whisper. I am sorry. It was the only way. Yeah, Cale said, looking away, towards the swirling energies outside. I know. The spark's survival, paramount. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken things. The physical danger was lessened, but the emotional landscape had become a minefield. Cale felt the chasm between them widen, no longer just cultural difference, but a gulf created by a necessary sacrifice that had stripped away the very thing that had bound them.
And the raw, sensual intimacy they had shared now felt like a relic of a different time, a consequence of a bond that no longer existed. He was simply Cale, and she was Lyra, the spark's sole protector again. He didn't know what came next. For any of them, the tension was different now. Not about survival, but about the possibility of rebuilding a connection on shattered ground, or accepting the profound loss of what had been. He was adrift, inside a ship, next to an alien woman who now felt like a stranger, holding a baby who was no longer magically tied to his soul. Lyra held Alara close, her strength slowly returning as the ship settled into the core of the nebula, shielded and hidden. Cale watched her from a distance, the emotional chasm between them a tangible thing in the quiet cabin. He was still there, a human on an alien ship, but his strange destiny seemed to have evaporated, leaving him feeling hollowed out. As the hours passed, and the danger of immediate pursuit receded, Lyra began to move around the ship, checking systems, her focus entirely on Alara and the vessel's integrity. Cale remained in the recessed berth, the baby's crib now beside Lyra's console, a silent demarcation of his altered status. He was a passenger now, maybe a temporary guardian, but no longer the destined father, no longer intrinsically linked. He tried to initiate conversation a few times, questions about the Riven worlds, about their next steps, but Lyra's responses were brief, focused. Her resonance closed off to him, the open channel of communication they had shared, the silent language of feeling, was gone. It was like talking to a stranger again, albeit one he had held, whose body he had learned, whose luminous eyes had seemed to see into his soul. One cycle, Lyra approached him, Alara still in her arms. She paused a few feet away, her expression unreadable. Cale, she said, her voice calm, formal. We are safe for the immediate future. The nebula's resonance is stable. We must assess resources and plan our next move. Okay, Cale replied, his voice flat. What do you need me to do? He expected a task. Check the life support, scout a route, something practical. You are no longer bound to the spark, Lyra stated, echoing her earlier words. But the context was different now. It wasn't just a statement of fact. It felt like a statement of his diminished role. Your presence here, the purpose for it, has been fulfilled. The bond allowed us to reach this sanctuary. It is severed. You are free. Free. The words sounded like abandonment. Free to go where? Back to his wrecked ship? Back to the lonely life of a scavenger? He looked at Alara, at the soft glow of her light, and felt a fierce protective instinct rise, one that had nothing to do with prophecy and everything to do with the small life he had saved, the life he had held, the child he had started to see as his own, bond or no bond. He looked at Lyra, at her closed-off resonance, her formal posture. He was free, but he didn't want to leave. Not them. Free. Cale asked, his voice hardening. Is that what you want? For me to leave? Lyra hesitated, her gaze dropping to Alara. The high lineages sought to eliminate you because of the bond. Without it, the threat is lessened. For Alara, for you. It is the logical conclusion. Logical. Cale felt a bitter laugh build in his chest. His life had rarely, if ever, been logical. He hadn't saved Alara because of prophecy. He'd saved her because she was a baby in a dying pod. He hadn't felt drawn to Lyra because of a bond. He'd felt drawn to her because she was fierce and beautiful, and carried a burden he understood. Logical conclusion. Cale pushed himself up from the berth, standing to face her. He kept his voice low, but it vibrated with frustrated emotion. Is that what this was to you, Lyra? Logic. A means to an end. Use the chaotic human to get the spark where he needed to be. Break the link, and then discard the piece that's no longer useful. Lyra flinched, a subtle shift in her posture, a momentary flicker in her inner light that suggested his words had struck home. But she didn't respond immediately. She just held Alara, her gaze fixed on the child. I thought we had something, Cale continued, the words tumbling out, raw and unplanned. Something real. You felt it too. The connection, the intimacy. Was that just part of the bond? A function of my useful chaos? Lyra finally met his gaze, and he saw a depth of pain in her luminous eyes that mirrored his own. Cale, it was not merely function, she said, her voice regaining some of its resonant quality, but it was laced with sorrow. The bond, it amplified what was already present, the necessity of our circumstances. It accelerated certain developments, their shared fear, their tentative trust, their desperate, intimate connection, reduced to developments. Cale felt his heart clench. So it wasn't real, he asked, the question hanging heavy in the air. It was real within the bond, she clarified, her voice soft but firm. Now the conditions have changed. The bond is severed. What remains must exist on its own terms. What remained? A human who had seen behind the veil of his own jadedness and found something worth protecting, something he desperately didn't want to lose. An alien woman burdened by duty and lineage, who had allowed herself a moment of connection in the face of overwhelming pressure, and a baby oblivious to the emotional turmoil swirling around her, whose very existence had forged and broken the ties between them. My terms, Cale said, his gaze steady on hers. My terms are that I'm not leaving. Not Alara, not you. Lyra's luminous eyes widened slightly in surprise. Cale, you are free. It is safer for you to leave. To return to your own kind. Safer. Cale scoffed. My life hasn't been safe in years, and being free out there just means being alone. I'm tired of being alone, Lyra. He took a step closer, closing some of the distance between them. He could feel the absence of the resonant bond, the lack of that automatic connection. But there was something else there now, something built on shared experience, on vulnerability, on choice. Maybe the prophecy's bond is broken. Maybe I'm not the father's by cosmic decree anymore. But I was there when she needed someone. I held her. I ran with you, and I'm still here. And I want to be, if you'll let me. He wasn't demanding, not using the strange authority the bond had given him. He was asking, offering himself, his chaotic, flawed, human self, without the crutch of alien prophecy. He looked at her luminous eyes, searching his face, at Alara in her arms, at the soft glow that linked them. The tension in the cabin shifted again, from emotional conflict to hesitant hope. Lyra's inner light flickered uncertainly, no longer closed off, but open, vulnerable. The air was thick with unspoken questions, with the weight of their shared past and the terrifying uncertainty of their future. He had laid himself bare, offering a connection not based on destiny, but on choice. The decision, and whatever emotional intimacy might be built on the ruins of their broken bond, rested solely with her now. Lyra searched Cale's face, her luminous eyes reflecting the uncertainty in the dim cabin. The silence stretched, thick with the weight of his words, of his raw vulnerability. He stood before her, stripped of the cosmic title, just Cale, the chaotic human, who had refused to be discarded. The absence of the bond resonance was a physical silence, but into that silence rushed the echoes of shared fear, shared laughter, shared intimacy. She felt his presence now, not as a vibration tied to the spark, but as a distinct, powerful energy, unpredictable, yes, but also resilient, loyal in a way her own structured world rarely allowed. Cale, she said, her voice soft, hesitant.
You are not Kaelian. Our paths, they were joined by circumstance, by the prophecy. Now the prophecy is mute. Maybe the prophecy is wrong, Kale countered, stepping closer still. He reached out a hand, not towards Alara, but towards Lyra. He stopped short of touching her, giving her the choice. Maybe it doesn't take a cosmic bond to be family. Maybe it just takes showing up and staying. His hand hovered there, inches from hers, and Lyra felt the echo of their shared touch, the memory of skin against alien skin, the raw, beautiful vulnerability they had found in each other's arms. The physical intimacy hadn't been just a function of the bond. It had been a response to the overwhelming, desperate need for connection in a universe that seemed determined to keep them isolated. She had needed him, not just as the fathers of prophecy, but as Kale, the man who saw her burden and didn't flinch. She looked from his hand, rough and calloused, so different from her own shimmering form, to his face etched with weariness and unexpected hope. She looked at Alara, sleeping soundly, her soft glow a constant reminder of the life they had saved, together. The traditional path, dictated by lineage and prophecy, was clear. Ensure Alara's safety within the sanctuary. Then what? Resume her duty alone. Raise the spark without the unpredictable, anchoring presence of the human who had saved him. The thought felt profoundly empty. The bond had been the catalyst, the excuse, but what had grown in its shadow was something else entirely. Something that felt fragile and dangerous, but also deeply necessary. Slowly, deliberately, Lyra reached out her hand, her fingers, shimmering faintly, meeting his. The touch was different without the amplified resonance of the bond, less overwhelming, more subtle, but it was undeniably there. A connection based not on cosmic decree, but on shared experience, mutual respect, and a quiet, fierce affection that had blossomed in the heart of chaos. Stay, Kale, she said, her voice low and resonant, no longer formal, but filled with a warmth that reached deep into him. Not as father of the chosen one, if the prophecy is broken, but stay, with us. Kale's fingers closed around hers, a firm, grounding grip. He felt a wave of relief so profound it made him lightheaded. He was staying, he wasn't alone. He looked at Alara, then back at Lyra, at her luminous eyes reflecting his own emotions. The title, the prophecy, the empire, they were still out there, challenges for another day. But here, in the quiet heart of the Riven Worlds, in the safe bubble of Lyra's ship, they had found something unexpected and precious, a new beginning, built on the ruins of a broken destiny. He pulled her gently towards him, Alara safe between them, and rested his forehead against hers. The air between them vibrated softly, not with the amplified resonance of the prophecy bond, but with the quiet hum of their shared presence. Two disparate beings, forging a new kind of family, in the vast indifferent void. The universe had thrown them together, with the force of a supernova, tried to tear them apart, and in the aftermath, they had chosen to stay connected, building intimacy, not on fate, but on the messy, chaotic, stubbornly resilient foundation of human and alien hearts that had found their rhythm together. The journey wasn't over, the dangers weren't gone, but for the first time in a long time, Kale felt like he was finally home.